discussing the topic about triangle congruence. But before we discuss that, let us define what is congruent triangle, or how can we say that the two triangles are congruent. When we say congruent triangles, that means two triangles or geometric figures with exactly the same size and shape. So in this figure, makikita natin that we have two triangles that are congruent. We have triangle ABC and triangle DEF. Now, the first idea that we will encounter in this topic is the CPCTC. CPCTC means corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And this is the commonly proof that we are using to prove that two triangles are congruent. So, from the acronym itself, corresponding parts, ibig sabihin, all the parts of the two triangles must be congruent para masabi natin that the two triangles given are really congruent. So what are those parts? We have the sides and the angles. So let's say we have here triangle ABC is congruent to triangle KLM. So let us observe the markings na nakalagay sa ating two triangles. So let us begin with its sides. So if we have here line segment AB for the first given or part that is marked, the corresponding or the part that corresponds to this side on the other triangle is line segment KL. Then we have for the second, line segment AC is congruent to line segment KM. And for the third, so meron tayong tatlong markings dito sa line segment BC, meaning it is congruent to the other third side of the second triangle, which is line segment LM. Then for the angles naman, we have this one. Angle B is congruent to angle L. Then for the second given, we have angle A is congruent to angle K. And last is angle C is congruent to angle M. Now, if you show the three sides and three angles that are congruent to the two triangles, then we can use the CPCTC as proof to show that these two triangles are really congruent. And isa pang technique, if we have no figures given, take note that from its name we have ABC and then KLM. We can name already what sides or what are the three corresponding sides and angles which are congruent. So let's say this is ABC, meaning line segment AB is congruent to line segment KL. Then BC is congruent to LM. Then kung i-observe natin dito, tama siya sa figure. Now this time, we will be using the idea of CPCTC in proving that the two triangles are congruent. But this time, we will not use all the 6 parts or corresponding parts of the given triangle. We will be using only 3. So 3 parts only to show that the triangles are congruent using the idea of CPCTC. Okay, now let us start. So the first postulate is what we call the SSS, or the side congruence postulate. It means that if the sides of one triangle are congruent to the sides of the second triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So let us have an example. So let's say we have this given figure, or the first triangle ABC and for the second is triangle DEF. Now, based from the markings, let us name the three sides that are congruent in this given. So, based from the markings, we have line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE. Then, second given, line segment BC is congruent to line segment EF. Then we have line segment AC is congruent to line segment DF. Now we have already named the three sides which are congruent from the given triangle. And as the end proof, we can now say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, and they are congruent by SSS postulate. Now, before we proceed to the second postulate, which is the SAS, let us define first what is the included angle. When we say included angle, it is an angle between two sides. I have here three examples. So, we have triangle IGH for the first example. So, alin dito yung tinatawag na included angle? So, based from the markings, we have marked the first side, which is the line segment IG, or this side. And then for the second side, we have line segment GH. So, if these are the two sides which are given, ano dito yung kanyang included angle or angle between these two sides? So, we have angle G. So, for the second, we have angle I, kasi ito yung merong markings na sides or yung tinutukoy natin na sides. Then, for the third given, we have angle H, since we mark the two sides which are line segment IH and line segment GH or HG. So, ganito lang magpangalan ng included angle. All you have to do is to identify which side ang tinutukoy natin to identify the included angle or the angle between that two sides. So, saan natin gagamitin yung idea ng included angle? So, that is related to the next postulate, which is the SAS postulate. It states that if two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to the two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So, this time, the three corresponding parts that we will name are the two sides and the included angle of the two triangles. So, let us observe the given figure. And we have again markings for the sides and the included angle that we will be using to prove that these triangles are congruent. So, for the first given, we have line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE. Then we have the second markings for the angle, and the name of the angles are angle A is congruent to angle D. Now, these two angles is what we call the included angle, since sila ay nasa gitna ng two sides na papangalanan natin. Then, for the last information that we need, we have line segment AC is congruent to line segment DF. Now, for numbers 1 to 3 given, notice that the first given is for side, which are congruent. Then, for number 2, we name the angles that are congruent. And for the last number, we name the two sides which are congruent. Now, we can now state or prove why these two triangles are congruent. So, using the side, angle, and side, we have triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, and that is by SAS Congruence Postulate. So for the last postulate, before we discuss the ASA, let us define included side. Kasi gagamitin din natin yung idea ng included side in proving ASA congruence postulate. So if included angles are angles between two sides of a triangle, so what is included side? Included side, on the other hand, is the side between two angles. So meron ulit tayong tatlong example as given. So observe the markings. This time, we are naming two angles, and then we will define what is the included side in this triangle. So for the first given, we have angle I and angle G. And the included side between that two angle is line segment GI or line segment IG. So pwede natin pagbaliktaran yung two capital letters. That is how we name side of a triangle, or we are using the symbol for line segment. For the second given, we have angle I and then angle H. And the included side between that two angle is the line segment HI or IH. So hint, observe that the included side of the two angles is the two letters which is the name of the angle itself. So kung napapansin nyo, this is angle I and then this is angle G. Then the name of the side which is included to that two angle is the combination of the two letters or two angles using the symbol for line segment. The same with number 2, angle I and then angle H. So therefore, the included side is line segment HI or IH. So for the third given, we have angle G and then angle H. So therefore, the included side of that two angle is line segment GH or HG. So let us proceed with the last congruence postulate on triangle, which is the angle side angle or ASA postulate. This postulate states that if two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to the two angles and the included side of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So this time, ang papangalanan natin na corresponding parts of the triangles are the two angles and the included side. So let's say we have this given triangles. So observe the markings again. We have the given markings for the two angles and one side on the first triangle. Then sa second triangle, meron din tayong nakamark na two angles and then one side. So let us name the corresponding parts which are congruent. So we have angle A is congruent to angle D, since sila yung merong parehong markings. Okay, now for the next given, we have line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE. And that is what we call the included side. Next, or for the last given, we have angle B is congruent to angle E. So yan yung ating third given. Then, if we already named the three corresponding parts which are congruent, so we have the angle, side, and angle. Then we can say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF by ASA congruence postulate or the angle side angle. Now let us discuss the vertical angles reflexive sides, and angles. So when two triangles touch, there may be additional congruent parts. So let us observe the first figure. Okay, kung mapapansin nyo, we have two vertical or reflexive triangles. And if we have this given figure, we have two angles which are vertical. And from the definition of vertical angles are always congruent. And for the next figure, we have this triangle or two triangles which are sharing common side. And we call that as reflexive side. Ibig sabihin, side shared by two triangles. So, pag pinaghiwalay natin yung two triangles, we know that this side is automatic na congruent. Okay, now I have here additional given. If we have this kind of triangle, then we can say that these two triangles which has reflexive sides are congruent. And by what postulate? So let us observe the markings. We have the side which are congruent, and then the angles. And the third information that we need is the side which are reflexive or which is reflexive. Ibig sabihin, automatic, they are congruent. So we can prove that these two triangles are congruent using the idea of SAS. Now for the next given, observe the markings. We have this side is congruent to this side, and then the other side are also congruent. So ano yung last information that we need to prove that these two triangles are congruent, and what postulate can we use to prove that they are really congruent? So since meron tayong vertical angle sa figure na to, then we can say that these angles are congruent. Now we can already prove that these two triangles are congruent using the three corresponding parts, which are side, angle, side. So we have the SAS postulate. Another example of reflexive sides and angles. So when two triangles overlap, there may be additional congruent parts. So kanina ang pinakita natin ay when two triangles touches. This time, the two triangles overlap. So let's say these two corresponding parts are congruent. Then what is the additional information that we have to prove that these two triangles are congruent? So observe the figure. Take note that when two triangles overlap, we have the what we call the reflexive side, or the side shared by two triangles. So in this figure, nasaan kaya yung ating reflexive side? So let us mark. Ayun. So we have this side. Ibig sabihin, since they are overlapping triangles and kitang-kita na they are congruent, so this is the third information that we have to prove that these two triangles are congruent. Another example. So this time we have the given angles and side which are congruent. So what is the other parts or part of a triangle which are congruent to the two given? So since they overlap and we have this given part, which is congruent to the 2. So this part, ano kayang tawag natin dito? We have reflexive angle. So reflexive angle is an angle shared by 2 triangles. So let us mark. Ayun. So we can say that these 2 triangles are congruent using the 3 information that we have. Okay, now let us have short exercises. All you have to do is to indicate the additional information needed to enable us to apply the specified congruence postulate. So ito yung ating given na figures. As you can see, we have only 2 parts which are congruent, or meron tayong 2 parts which are marked, indicated that they are congruent. So what is the additional information that we need if we will show that these 2 triangles are congruent using ASA postulate, or the angle side angle? So for the angle, we have already angle C is congruent to angle E. And then the side should be included, or nasa gitna dapat siya ng 2 angles which are congruent. And we have already the given side. We have line segment BC is congruent to line segment DE. So what is the third part na papangalanan natin to show that these 2 triangles are congruent using the ASA postulate? Take note, dapat yung ating side ay included. Ibig sabihin, nasa gitna ng 2 angles which are congruent. So we have angle B is congruent to angle D. So what about the SAS postulate, or the side angle side? This time, kailangan ang ating angle ay included. Now, if we have already the given side which is congruent to the side of the second triangle, so we have line segment BC is congruent to line segment DE, meron na rin tayong angle, and that angle should be included or between the 2 sides which are congruent. So automatic, ang ating third information should be line segment AC and line segment FE.